4th of July may be pleasant for many of you, but come with me and I will tell you a story about the cursed city, so pay attention because there is a point. If you understand it, you will win life. The streets were full of festivities and joy on the 4th of July, but that night had an unusual story for a small town called Riva. As the sun set and the shadows filled in, something strange was in the air. The street lights had dimmed and their disappearance soon resembled the blackout of all the goats they had ever experienced. The children who were playing and having fun from house to house in the aura of the peaceful night, were scared when they saw the sudden darkness that had accompanied it. Worried mothers and fathers quickly took their children home and the door was closed tightly. But some who clawed too hard thought a little more about this strange opening and closing darkness. They took to the streets in the middle of the night, looking for a mediating response to the sudden blackout that had engulfed the city. There was no light left in the town, except for the terrible street lamp that had slowly lit up before. A rope was stretched from the sky to the post. Monsters walked the streets and created terrible things from the shadows. Some said that when the night of the 4th of July comes, the ghosts rise up and bring the bloodiest dreams on earth. Unaware of all the fear that had captured the entire city into oblivion, people were suddenly experiencing a bold nightmare called the 4th of July. With the arrival of the alien night of the 4th of July, more and more coolness appeared among the people of Ravenna. Going out on the street in this scary night meant committing suicide. But some madmen were still looking for the secret of this terrible darkness. A group of the most daring citizens took to the streets at night to investigate this incident. They went about their business with quiet effort, looked at the corners openly and tried to discover a secret of this scary phenomenon. Loud dark sounds were recorded all around, worshipping the ears of the citizens. Unknown shadows were coming out of the street and you could feel the terror in the distance. Heavy and dark footsteps were suddenly heard in their disappearance. At the corner of the street, a group of children were clinging together in fear, looking at each other in horror. One of them was bent over with folded hands, commanding the situation that was unfolding. Then, with a sudden movement, he dragged one of his friends towards an old soldier who had appeared in the darkness of the street. When the boy didn't take off the policeman, he was shaken by a wave of panic. The soldier approached him more and more slowly to cast a horizontal shadow in the darkness. There was a feeling of chaos and despair among the citizens. One by one, they turned aside and ran towards their homes, but they knew that in this terrible night there was an evil presence hiding among them who could target them at any moment. That night, an aura of darkness enveloped the streets of Ravenna. People were filled with fear and made them more busy. But some still gathered all their courage and went far in search of the truth. From the corners and dark streets, terrible and passive voices could be heard. The thrown stones were the epitome of monsters hiding in the heart of darkness. The color of blood was reflected on the lips and devilish laughter based on the corners. One after another, witnesses confirmed their fears. A huge shadow with a slow movement in the street was impossible to be chipped, like a terrible scream, led through the darkness. A cruel and cruel monster that had turned into a dark and brutal cookie. To their horror and earthquake, the people discovered that the shadows had practically come to life. They turned the bloods into slaves and landed around them. They woke up, turned to rage and violence, and received a powerful force of hatred and revenge on the 4th of July. They were looking for only one thing: freedom from their normal and traumatic life. They had changed, dark and merciless spirits who now possessed the night with power and folly. People's efforts to search for the truth continued. But will they ever find an answer to this terrible darkness? Or will the dark ways that have emerged in this black night lead them to a bitter fate? As the veil of night fell over the city of Ravenna, the terrible events progressed to a further stage. Suddenly, demons with good and sinister bodies appeared. Long smiles, which of course were without joy, covered their faces. Each of these demons had a unique and destructive power. With beautiful and coordinated movements, they moved among the people and laughed loudly. Confused and terrified citizens looked for safety in every corner, but there was no peace anywhere. The police officers were faced with ignorance and helplessness because the terror had acquired powerful angles that had nothing to do with the law. The city of Ravenna had turned into a hellish dictatorship, where demons were known as tyrants and rulers. The brutally released blood was boiling fast on the streets and spreading fear and terror. No one was safe, and at any moment they could become victims of this hell. Did citizens take action with courage? Or would they fail against this dark and sinister selling power? In a dry and still morning, Ravenna was alone and quiet. The streets were empty and everything was back to order and silence. But there was still fear in the air and people felt insecure. They were hoping that this would be a good and safe solution to save them from serious harm. But a big thing happened that shocked everyone. One person pushed a button, and everything changed. The voice we heard was, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then there was a loud crash accompanied by fire and smoke that scared everyone. The bodies of people turned into facades, and most of them were sleeping under the floors with the soulless and scary company of hands. They were no longer appearances, but instruments controlled by evil hands. The city of Ravenna was filled with terror as well as bloody scars. There were mournful sounds in the air, and death loomed in every corner of the city. Does no one take action against these dark forces? Is the terror clinging to the city itself, and everything is going to destroy itself? Ghosts from another hell appeared in Ravenna. They had returned to the living world from the beginningless darkness. They were filled with rage and violence, ready to destroy. The dreaded cold winds returned and were at all angles. Terrible screams and heartbreaking voices could be heard from them. Their sad songs screamed everyone's loneliness, and the groups rushed towards the people without any defense left for them. The city had reached the most complete state of destruction. The streets were full of wounded and regretful souls. The blood was exhausted to the ground, and now it was pouring out in more torrents. Hope took away the goodness from people's hearts and left bitterness and soullessness in its place. Is there no help left for Ravenna? Will this infinite darkness win and conquer the city? Or maybe in this entanglement of darkness, a light of hope and revolution can be found. Absolute darkness had engulfed the city. No ray of light shines in the sky. Everything was engulfed in darkness. A darkness that was endless and terrible. Tired and despondent screams filled the desert. They pressed like hot mains on the heart of every fatalist. Madness and fear sat in people's eyes. There was no hope left for the broken hearts that were suffering from fatigue and despair. People could not escape from this arrest of darkness. Life had become a waking dream, and there was no escape. Boring ghosts from their horrific past drift through the rubble of the city. Blood was flowing from the streets, and fire was rising from the collapse of mansions and houses. Again the curtains of darkness had fallen, and the endless terror was advancing step by step. Will a ray of hope shine in these last moments? Can we still find a sign of life and salvation in this endless plunge into horror? Or maybe this city will come to an end and half of the connections will not exist in the laughing darkness. In the final chapter of this darkly terrifying era, eerie chants accompany its final stages. The battle between light and dark has dragged on and is about to end, but a price has been paid. Warring factions fight to break the ideals of darkness, rifts filled with hope and destruction, trying to break out of the dark's grip. People are also involved in their attacks during the day, and at night they are immersed in the semi-dark state of despair. But in the heart of some brave people, a spark of hope shines. They put their souls to the last moment to fight the infinite darkness. The voices of prayer and blessings along with the decisive and heartbroken words of some people are going in the air towards the hands of their terrible ideals. But the answer of the darkness to these sounds becomes more terrible and violent. When they registered their names, they did their best to save the city. But the end came suddenly for them. The screams of the military forces that surrounded them in the last darkness silenced their lives full of courage and determination. But the power of light and their brave will was still present in the heart of the city. In mental and physical battles, they persisted in moments of confrontation. Some of them were chivalrously holding hands, creating patterns of light in the darkness. Since they were destroyed, only one person alone, seeing the green in the heart of darkness, awakened hope. As long as that person was able to forgive the greens of light and cleverly overcome the darkness, there is still hope for the destroyed city. The battle between light and darkness begins, and the outcome is yet to be determined. We don't know, maybe this terrible story will bring hope in the end and free the city of Ravenna from darkness.